Hit it. Red lines, front page. Bum, 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 bum. Welcome if you just joined us. This is Smooth 90.1. Love music, love life. It's time for Freshly Pressed 981 when we bring you detailed analysis of headline news and stories making rounds in the dailies this morning. Joining us in our conversation, of course, as we take you through the stories, is Mr. C. Good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning, Shokpe. Good morning, Mr. Baker. Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to have you here, Lagos. You can be a part of our conversation. You know the drill. We're streaming live on YouTube. It's youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos. And also, we're taking messages on Twitter. Please use the hashtag freshly pressed 981. And finally, your messages come to our WhatsApp platform, which is 0809 444 0981.
Okay, so we're going to start off with this article in from This Day newspaper. Massive oil theft and high pipeline repairs cost are bleeding Nigeria's economy. Now, we've heard from the NNPC, which has gone on to say, well, I mean, this is the company disclosed that the country lost an average of $200,000 per day of its crude oil production, and went on to say that a combination of huge oil pipeline repairs cost and a high level of crude oil theft are bleeding the country's economy, with losses amounting to at least $29 billion in the last 6 years between 2015 and 2021. And this came from the extrapolation of said figure of 200,000 barrels. And Mr. C, this is a very long, very involved article that goes to different stakeholders. In fact, we even heard from Tony Alumelu, who's the chairman of Hares Holding, who said a few days ago, and I quote, "We produce sometimes about 87,000 barrels per day, of which thieves take 50,000 per day. And to me, this requires a national seminar or dialogue." Mr. C, what say you about these very high numbers that we're seeing?
Okay, thank you, Shokpe. This is a very disturbing story, and I'm searching for the words. So, between 2015 and 2021, we've lost officially,
Mhm.
and I stress officially, about 200,000 barrels of oil per day. That comes to about 73 million barrels per year. And we're talking about $29 billion conservatively. Now convert that at today's dollar rate, and we're looking at 16.5 trillion naira. What this means is that this sum of money could have funded at least three of the past four budgets entirely. Now, the Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative (NATI)
Mhm.
estimates that we've lost 41.4 billion in the past 10 years. Now, the question will be asked, do we not have a joint task force in the Niger Delta specifically set up to deal with
Deal with
stuff
this.
like this? Yes, we do. The question is, how are they able to steal this oil, these massive amounts, and nothing has happened? That's a very good question. I'm not sure I have the answer I can say to that.
Mhm.
But it would appear, and there have been statements by concerned Niger Delta activists that there is some high-level connivance between security agencies, politicians, and some scrupulous individuals to steal these huge sums of money via crude oil. Now, we must remember the people who are stealing this crude oil are not paying tax.
Hmm.
They're not paying anything to the government, and that money is going away. What are they using the money to do? We have no idea. Now, for a country that has been seriously bleeding money, and that's just one leg of the story. The other leg is our aging infrastructure. There have been multiple breaks over the years. And between 2015 and 2018, we spent at least 100 billion each year repairing our pipelines. In 2020 and 21, the figures dropped to 60 billion and 29 billion respectively, which would indicate that the pipelines are more or less abandoned now.
Mm.
Now, the president came in on the back of certain promises. One, he was security conscious, he had experience as a general, he was going to crack down on insecurity. Now, prior to him coming into office, the previous administration had paid Niger Delta warlords money to secure the pipelines. But NNPC data shows that immediately after those contracts were signed, the breaks or the interruptions on the pipelines increased. General Buhari entered office and considered it a collective insult on the Nigerian security agencies for those contracts to continue to exist when the Nigerian armed forces were still operational. But here we are, we're bleeding sums of money, and this has to stop. Clearly, people are being enriched by all of this. And it begs the question, why are we not using technology? Now, these huge amounts, quantities of crude oil can only be moved by certain sizes of vessels. We continue to hear stories of Nigerian crude oil being shipped onto international waters, being moved from smaller vessels onto larger vessels and being sold. Now, there's this.
So the question is, by the way, how does all of this happen without relevant eyes seeing this?
So it's the same way petrol is illegally trucked out of Nigeria to our neighboring countries. That's why we're subsidizing petrol around us.
Okay.
And we have customs, we have immigration, we have the security agencies. You have a
Many checkpoints.
you have a 33,000 liter truck, which is very large, big. It moves and nobody happens to see it. So for as long as we continue to pretend to ourselves and continue to look the other way, we will continue to suffer things like this. And it is instructive that the security agencies wake up, but more importantly, the representatives of the people in the National Assembly actually wake up and focus on serious issues.
Because we've actually heard from people in the community who have said, oh, this needs to stop. People in the actual community who are saying that businesses are getting driven away. So at what point does this become too much and we start to lose business, like a lot of businesses?
It will become, I think we'll get to that point when we can no longer borrow. Because the monies we've lost would have removed the need to borrow.
All right, thank you so much for that, Mr. C. If you want to add your thoughts to our conversation this morning, please send them to 0809-444-0981. Let's move on to our next story from the Punch newspaper. This one talks about the reps probing the West African Examination Council. They're talking about paper leakages, malpractice, amongst other things. Now, to put a context to this, the House of Representatives has resolved to investigate the incessant leaking of question sets of exams conducted by the West African Examination Council, leading to malpractice and cancellation of results by the regional body. Now, adopting the motion moved by a member of the House, Benjamin Kalu, at the plenary on Wednesday, the lawmaker urged WAEC to establish a more rigorous standard for the administration, monitoring, supervision, and evaluation of full-level examinations in Nigeria. What do you make of this?
Okay, so first things, Kadi. I'm not sure the House of Representatives, they're actually very busy now.
Why did you say this?
Please. They devoted quality time to decide to probe WAEC paper leakages. Are they aware that even the common entrance exams have been leaking for years? So why are you jumping one stage? Because if you miss the foundation, everything built on top of that foundation will collapse.
It could be because they're saying that they're concerned that the Global Development Index, Nigeria ranks 161 out of 181 countries at the moment in youth education and employment. So, I mean, irrespective whether starting at the foundation or starting somewhere else, this is a serious issue.
So yeah, beyond that, it is a serious issue. But here, so my thoughts are this. They're not a court of law, right? So there's only so much evidence they can get in the course of their hearings, right?
Okay.
Now, after the hearing, what next? What's the plan? All of this is indicative of election season. WAEC exams didn't start leaking this year or last year. Now, they argue that every time the exams are cancelled because the paper has leaked, substantial costs are incurred in rescheduling the exam. But that is the proper thing to do. If the integrity of the exams is thrown into question, you have to reschedule the exam. Now, why do exams leak? Why do papers leak? It is this inordinate desire to place undue emphasis on certificates rather than the ability of the individual to learn on the job to develop himself exponentially. So, because there's undue emphasis on certificates, even people who cannot read and pass properly are then constrained and compelled to seek other means to pass. And then you have people who graduate from schools who possess certificates they cannot simply defend.
So, in other words, what are you saying they should do?
So, in other words, yes, they should investigate, but we must come to the point where we realize school is not for everyone. Formal school. So you can go to technical schools, you can start business, but formal school is not for everyone. Not everyone has the academic competence to go through a rigorous academic session. And that's the gospel truth.
All right. What say you, Lagos? Let's hear your thoughts. Please send your messages to 0809-444-0981. Here's a message from Joseph. Joseph says, please, please, please. I don't want to talk about anything concerning NNPC this morning, but I've been forced to. Even Mr. C is searching for words to describe these characters. How can NNPC boss Mele Kyari be telling us that he has vowed to sue importers of bad PMS? He's supposed to have sued them by now. We should be hearing the outcome of such law in lawsuits. I've always maintained the president should sack. Okay, and they should also not worry about the lawsuit because Serap is already going to court on the matter on behalf of the poor masses. What is worrisome is that some people are so adamant to support a failed government. All right.
Okay, we have this one in from Joseph from Silver State, who says, what is the punishment for individuals that handle the importations? NNPC and the government, they're taking Nigerians for a ride, yet there is no end in sight for the scarcity. Are the power discos to experiencing adulterated electricity? Why has this power supply gone so low ever since the fuel scarcity started? Asks Joseph.
And Jerry comes in to say the killing of Northerners is politically motivated to tarnish the image of the Southeast over 2023 elections. Okay, if you've got questions, if you've got messages, you can send them into 0809-444-0981.
This one in from Yinka, who says this bad fuel wahala is a legitimate reason for an NSARS-like protest. But no, we won't. I have always maintained that Nigerians are hardworking but mentally lazy. We need to make a lot of noise about this fuel wahala, but no, we are not doing that. When the National Assembly began questioning the NNPC GMD, I was asking myself how much of these fellows had to queue at the station as early as 5:45 in the morning, because I did, and I didn't get fuel until 9 o'clock. See, I don't want any compensation. Just give me the name of the DPR fellow that signed the product as cleared. But Tom says, Yinka.
D from Malasa comes in to say, I vehemently disagree with Mr. C on schooling. Not for everyone. Literacy is for everyone. It's the level of education that is the issue. Basic education must be for all.
He did not say that basic education must not be for all. Please do not put words in our analyst's mouth, okay? What he did say was that, and I'm going to paraphrase you here, Mr. C, but that, the emphasis should not be only on academic education. There's also technical education, because we do need that in the country. Yeah. Trust me, blue-collar workers can earn more than white-collar workers in the right environment. Just putting that out there. All right, so let's move on now. From this day newspaper, Buhari accuses National Assembly of inserting 887 billion naira into 2022 budget. Yesterday, the president criticized the National Assembly for removing crucial projects from the 2022 budget estimates sent to it by the executive, and then inserting their own projects to the tune of 887 billion naira in the fiscal document before it was signed into law. He also accused the lawmakers of making unnecessary incursions into the operational areas of the executive. But then again, he went on to ask them to amend the 2022 Appropriation Act passed in December 2021. Mr. C, is this coming at this time after this has already... what do you make of this?
Okay, thank you, Shopman. So the 2022 budget was initially passed, but at that time they hadn't decided whether they were going to continue the fuel subsidy regime. Now they've concluded and determined that they're going to maintain it well into 2023. the need now arose for a supplementary budget, and this is what they're trying to get passed. Now, when he said, the headline suggests that the National Assembly inserted 887 billion worth of projects into the 2022 budget. Yes, of course, they have the right to. Now, the executive always initiates the budget, the appropriation bill. Now, when the appropriation bill comes to the National Assembly, because they are the representatives of the people, wherever the executive hasn't sufficiently provided for projects to take care of the people, they have the constitutional and legal right to insert projects that will ideally and theoretically benefit the people.
Okay.
Now, that is the ideal situation, where in reality it could be much different. Now, he accused them of getting into the operational space. And to a certain extent, he's correct. For example, there was a provision of 22 billion for the sinking fund. Now, a sinking fund is a fund where federal or state governments put in money and save over a period of time to meet the obligations when they've taken loans. Now, the National Assembly removed the 22 billion, but we have loans that are maturing. And if we are unable to pay our contractually defined obligations, we then run the risk of incurring penalties. Why the National Assembly would do that defeats understanding. And he's requested that it be put back. And there's certain other items that he's also requested that they put back. For example, allowances for the Nigerian Navy, Air Force, Police that were taken up by the National Assembly. He's asked that they be put back. Now, the question is, given the security situation in the country at the moment, why would those allowances be taken out? Now, we understand and we are aware that we don't have the sufficient number of personnel to deal with our security problems. So the ones we have on ground, we have to
take care of them.
Yeah, we have to look after them. We have to motivate them. So it's interesting, but I know that having submitted the letters, this National Assembly is quite favorable to the executive. It has proven quite favorable in the past. So we expect the appropriation supplementary bill to be passed.
All right. Thank you so much for that. By the way, we're also streaming live on YouTube. You can use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981, but also look for us on YouTube. It's youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. Let's move on to our next story from the Guardian newspaper. Federal government seeks coordination partnership to reduce cholera-related deaths. Now, the Federal Ministry of Water Resources on Wednesday called for stakeholders coordination and renewed commitment from all states to reduce cholera-related deaths in the country. Now, there are reports that the new number of cases reportedly nationally in 2021 stood at 111,062, and it goes deeper than that, though. But what do you make of the story?
Okay, thank you, Daddy. This is a very sad story, and last year we lost 4,000 people to cholera officially, and I was thought to go out to the families. Now, we're all aware of the near absence or the very low absence of quality drinking water in a lot of Nigerian communities. Now, allied with that is the prevalence of open defecation in a lot of local governments. Now, as of January 2022, only 76 local government areas out of 774 were entirely free of open defecation. That is less than 10%. So we need to put that into perspective. A lot of work still needs to be done. A lot of communities do not have access to pipe-borne water that is clean. So they are forced to drink water from unimaginable places. And the state governments, the local governments have to do a lot more. You have to continue to sensitize the people on a recurring basis. You have to get hygiene kits provided seamlessly and regularly. You have to teach them how to boil their water. But more importantly, we must decide, we must be deliberate that we will provide Nigerians with access to clean, potable water. We can't run away from this because You have cholera, you have dysentery. I wonder what the figures for dysentery are. But in the 21st century, in this decade, we honestly should not be discussing cholera.
All right, 0809444091. Let's quickly get to our messages up on YouTube. This one here from Lofix Gamer says, this isn't rocket science. You can have computer-based testing with randomized questions from a data bank refreshed regularly. If manual, you can have different randomly signed options as well. And he also, well, we're taking comments on YouTube.
Lofix, we do take YouTube comments. We love YouTube comments. Please keep them coming. Remember, we are streaming live up on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. Okay, so more comments in. Cisco Delgado says, Mrs. C, it is true, school is not for everyone, but it's a necessity for national development. People, we're back to this. It's not a generalized school, okay? School should is a right for everyone.
So let me clarify this, maybe so everyone will be at rest. Primary school, secondary school, yes, everyone should go through primary school and secondary school. However, not everyone deserves to go to university. You may hate me for
it. It
this.
should be a choice.
It should be based on your competence and your ability. Not many people can survive a 4-year rigorous academic activity in a university. They simply don't have the brains for it.
All right, Mr. C. I don't know if those are the best choice of words.
I'm not sure if I agree with that completely, and we don't have time to discuss it, unfortunately.
Barry from Lekki comes in to say, solution to these PMS challenges is removal of subsidy. Edmund comes in to say, formal education is not for everyone. It's the gospel truth. Maybe that is so, but how many Nigerians are really receiving formal education anyways? You guys must consider and choose, yes, our words.
First of all, we didn't say it's the gospel truth. Second of all, technical education is still education. It is also education. And that also was part of what Mr. C said earlier, which is we need to kind of change our thinking around that technical academic distinction. All right, we have this one, Ada from Ikoyi, who says, all this story about exam leakages is neither here nor there. Have you looked at the pass rate recently? They are dismal, and we don't have enough people in schools. On top of that, our educational system is in crisis, and saying people shouldn't go to school does not help. Education is a fundamental human right and a necessity for any developing nation. Half of the reason the country is in the mess it is today is due to a lack of education from primary to tertiary levels. No critical thinking skills, he says Ada. Well, Ada, hopefully what we said before does go somewhere towards clarification. But now we move on because we've got more.
Okay, so the next story. Okay, my story. Okay, okay, so it's from Premium Times. Let's talk about insecurity. So Zamfara residents to pay 40.7 million naira protection levy to bandits following sack of military base. Now let's put a context to this real quick because the story is very, very, very. There's a lot to talk about in the story. So 6 months after sacking a military base in the area, bandits have collected at least 40.7 million naira as protection levy from residents in Mutumichi communities in Mara local government, and also they are said to have delivered another 9.7 million to bandits in February, on the 4th of February, as a last installment of the levy collected from various peasant communities in Mutumichi. Mr. C, what are your thoughts?
Okay, thank you, Kadi. So this story speaks to the absence of the state actors in Zamfara, especially in this Maru local government. Now, a military base was sacked 6 months ago, right? Because it was attacked and 9 security operatives lost their lives. And our thoughts go out to their families. Now, 6 months after what happened, it appears, even though the story is not explicit on it, that military base might have been shut down or closed. Now, nature naturally abhors a vacuum. So the state actors are unable or absent to perform their roles. A non-state actor in the form of a bandit kingpin has stepped in, and he's billed them for protection services. And it is sad to hear, to read, that they paid 40.7 million naira because they're afraid of being attacked. Now, the challenge with making payments like this is once you start, it really doesn't stop until someone stronger than the person presently collecting the protection payments shows up.
They're also saying that outside the almost the 40.7 million paid, it doesn't include in monies that's also paid separately
Ransoms.
for ransoms. So where does the government step in all of this? Because I mean, if we're seeing reports like this, if we're having conversations like this, where does the government step in?
So, first of all, each governor in Nigeria has a security vote. The amounts differ. Now, the state commissioner for police, what exactly is he doing? The commander of the army unit in the state, what exactly is he doing? The State Security Council, when they meet, what do they do? What do they discuss? Because this sounds like repeated interactions with these people to collect money. And if they paid 40.7, the bandits now know that, okay, these people will generate money if we threaten them.
This is
So
not a new
when they
story.
run out, so when this 40.7 million is finished, has been spent, is exhausted. It's not like the bandits have a regular hustle. They kidnap people, they rustle cattle. They can just wake up, send another invoice. We want you to pay 10 million or 20 million. We give you a 2-week deadline. And the poor people will be constrained to pay. It's not like Zamfara. It's one of those states where there's a lot of economic activity like Lagos State. So I even wonder how they came up with those sums of money. And obviously they're paying cash. But we implore the security agencies to look into this matter. They're Nigerians and they're entitled to be protected.
Thank you, Mr. C.
All right, let's move on now to flight cancellations. This article coming in from the Punch newspaper headline reads, "Most airlines yet to upgrade planes for bad weather," says federal government. This according to the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sherika, who disclosed this at a climate awareness event in Abuja, which was put together by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. Now, we heard from the National Assembly, which recently, in fact, the National Assembly Joint Committee on Aviation, which recently threatened to pass legislation that would empower foreign airlines to fly domestic routes in order to check the abuse of passengers' rights by indigenous carriers following repeated, and I mean repeated, complaints of flight delays and cancellations. Some people will say, oh, my flight was at 6:30. We flew at 7 p.m. So what say you about this, Mr. C?
Okay, sure. Very quickly, I'll start from the suggestion that they will get pass legislation to allow foreign airlines to run local services here. I don't know how they come up with these proposals. And it's a simple truth. The regulatory environment here, at best, is chaotic. You don't refine jet fuel here, so the prices are arbitrary. 1 week it's at 200, the next week it will be at 400. You have strikes all over the place. So I don't know how that is. How are you going to convince an Emirates, a Qatar Air, a British, a Delta to come to Lagos to fly how many passengers? Is there a market for them to actually come down, set up shop, and do all of that? But beyond that, you are complaining that they haven't upgraded their planes. For the love of everything good, you set the standards. So what are the plans? Why not just upgrade your standards, amend your regulations, and say, look, planes that are not compliant with the instrument landing system that have just been installed will not be allowed to fly. Case solved.
All right, because of our time, let's quickly move on to our next story. Real quick, this one talks about mismanagement, basically, and I'd like you to take a minute to just answer this real quick. So the reps to probe alleged mismanagement of 165 billion appropriated for the Nigeria Correctional Services. The story comes from Premium Times this morning.
Okay, so very quickly, yes, 165 billion has been budgeted for the Nigerian Correctional Service in the past 2 years, but we see that their staff, their officers of the Nigerian Correctional Service are poorly trained, poorly motivated. They're not looked after. They buy the uniforms themselves. So it's a good question. The House of Reps should actually determine how that money was spent, and if any was stolen, whoever is responsible should be prosecuted.
All right, one more story. We have 1 more minute to squeeze in one story.
Okay.
Story.
All right, let's do it then. So this one comes in from the Punch newspaper. ASU fumes as federal government declares strike illegal. In fact, we heard from the Minister of Labor and Employment, Chris Ngige, who said that the lecturers are away without leave, not on strike.
Okay, so very quickly, yet again, agreements reached with ASU have not been implemented. Yet the federal government is seeking to renegotiate already agreed positions. Now you haven't paid them, they go on strike, you say it's illegal. Good luck to you.
All right, that's our show. Don't forget, guys, there's more to come in a few more minutes. It's Lagos Talks 981, where you get to talk to us. However, though, you can find our analyst up on social media. His name is Mr. C. That's the Mr. C on Twitter. You can take up the conversation there. And also, we're at Smooth 91 FM across all platforms as well. In a few more minutes, like I mentioned, it's Lagos Talks 981.
In Ghana, listen, in Ghana, right? When you want to apply for university admission,
Yes.
your school certificates exams, they take one of maths, one of English, one of your science subjects, and then three subjects linked to what you want to study. Then they total the scores. So for law, for example, you must have an aggregate of 10 or 12. For economics, maybe 12 or 14. So they add it up. So, and because it's not centralized, the university can advise you at the point in time that, look, based on your grades,
You should do something.
university is not for you, that maybe you should go and consider something else. No, they tell you it's there and then. So you don't waste anybody's time. You don't waste your time and your money. You don't waste their time.
Yeah.
I think it's what we should do here, too.
Kaide, some people